Now you've created your own CrateDB cluster and loaded the course data, it's time to run some simple SQL queries and play around with the data on your own. Here in the CrateDB Cloud Console, I've got a query that I'll paste in, and this is going to query the 311 calls table, so that table of reports from citizens about issues with infrastructure in the city. And what we're going to do is ask it to summarize the number of calls where the type features the word pothole by day of week. In this table, the day of week is in the created day of week field, and the week days start with Sunday, which is day 1. I'll run the query here, and we can see that the most potholes, 1,440, are reported on Tuesdays, and the least are reported on days 1 and 7, Saturday and Sunday, over the weekend, which I guess makes sense as people aren't traveling so much on the weekend because they're not going to work. Next, let's try a query that uses our taxis and taxi rides data. I want to know which taxi operated the taxi ride or the trip that had the highest total cost. So here I'm selecting some fields from the taxis table, and I want the vehicle ID from the taxis table to match the vehicle ID from the taxi rides table, where the total cost field has the highest value. And for this, we use CrateDB's max by. This returns the value of its first parameter, so vehicle ID, at the point at which the second parameter, total cost, was the highest. When I run this query, we'll see that vehicle 2417 performed the trip with the highest